Hello and welcome. My name is Paul Zielinski. I'm the Executive Director of the Federal Laboratory Consortium for Technology Transfer, and I'd like to invite you to, or welcome you to today's webinar series. Today's the first of our webinar series for 2021. We're taking advantage of the great showing we had at our national meeting this year, a wonderful participation virtually, and so we've been hoping to launch a virtual seminar series, and today is actually the first of those seminars. I would like to welcome today Brittany Sigler from the Small Business Administration as our honored guest. We're both thrilled and honored to have Brittany with us today. She's an expert in many of the different areas at the Small Business Administration that may be of interest to technology transfer offices. Many of us are familiar with the SBIR and STTR programs. We work with those all the time and we hear about those quite a bit. But there's a lot of different activities that take place at SBA that actually go beyond SBIR. And we're really thrilled to have Brittany with us today to talk about some of those other opportunities and how you might interface with the SBA. And so with that, let me turn it over to Brittany.
Thank you, Paul. It is wonderful to be here today. I'm excited to kick off this session and glad all of you are with us to get things really going. As Paul mentioned, I'm with the Small Business Administration. Some of you may know me through the work with my office, which is the Office of Innovation and Technology, and we're the coordinating hub across the SBIR and STTR programs, and have done many events and other great work with FLC over the years. However, just like most federal agencies, the Small Business Administration has many corners, and in fact, I will say between us, most folks who are familiar with SBA are probably less familiar with the innovation side, with SBIR, STTR, and all of that, with everything that tech transfer even entails. And so today we're hoping to kind of expose you to some other parts of the agency, at least a high enough overview to know what is going on. And then also be able to maybe point out, highlight some possibly useful tools and resources. So please do use the chat. I definitely want this session to be as valuable as possible. And a quick disclaimer, I might not be able to answer every specific question, but we will hopefully be able to connect you should you be extra curious on any of these topics over today. So the next slide, so SBA in a nutshell is here to help small businesses start and grow. It is a cabinet level agency, very small one at that compared to some of the other cabinet level agencies. But as folks have probably seen this last year, small businesses are definitely on the radar, very important part of the U.S. economy. On the next slide, SBA is divided into many sections, and if I were to list all of the programs, I think it would be a challenge to get through here today in an hour. But we can sum it up in what's listed in terms of helping small businesses start, grow, expand, and recover. Back when I started with SBA in 2013, we said the 3 C's. I'm probably not supposed to say that still, but it was really helpful to kind of break down the agency into an area that focused on counseling, more of assistance to even potential entrepreneurs who wanted to know, how do I even get my businesses started? What kind of information do I need? And how can I access all of the things, whether it's capital, space, anything related to getting that business off the ground. Now, on the contracting side, many of you might be familiar with contracts through your work, whether you are on the research side and receiving contracts, whether you're on a supportive side, helping federal contracts get in place. But SBA has a significant role I'll be talking through in the federal contracting realm. And then capital is the third C. And so most people who know SBA's guaranteed loan programs are very familiar with that capital bucket, but again, that can also be divided down into more information. So regardless, as we're talking about all of these resources today in the business life cycle, I do want you to know that many of the programs have been at SBA for years, and we also have some new ones that have come about in the last year and a half. And so again, please do submit any of your questions or your thoughts and your comments. And then I will say as well that towards the end, I'll save just a couple updates on SBA's SBIR front as well. So next slide. Again, just re-emphasizing the start, grow, expand, recover. And next, we're going to start with what I think is probably the most relevant, but still a challenge to navigate, and that is SBA's Resource Partner Network. And so SBA has a variety of programs trying to provide reliable advice to those who are interested in having a small business, connecting with experts across the country. So regardless of where you're located, every state, territory has access to SBA resource partners outside of SBA's district offices, which I'll also mention here shortly as well. So whether you or someone that you might be supporting would be wanting to work on a business plan or get advice on exporting, training your team, we're trying to make sure that everyone has access to quality and often free support services. Back, the latest number I could find in 2017, there were over 1.4 million small business owners received counseling or training from this resource partner network. So it definitely has a strong reach. So on the next slide, finding the right resource partner. Let's start on the next one with the SBDCs, the Small Business Development Center Network. Now, I will say SBDCs do range, and I hate to say that it can be a hard thing to generalize, but in a nutshell, overall, SBDCs are funded in part by SBA, often with other local funding, but they really can help companies or potential small businesses be able to see if it's viable to get started. So they'll help with the business plans. They're really great often with helping to access capital, so putting together loan packages and making those connections on a local level. So there's, I believe, over 900 locations, service locations. Every state has one or more lead centers. And so if you actually go to the association that is over the SBDC network, the SBDC, they have all the locations there. And again, everything I'll be discussing here in this resource section on SBA.gov, there is a local assistance tab. So you can kind of pop over to the local assistance on SBA.gov and see what's in your neighborhood. But the SBDCs also want to make a comment that there's several that have technology designations. So you might already be connected with them. It might be kind of an inherent part of your ecosystem that you know those counselors or you know kind of that network. Many of the SBDCs are part of our kind of SBIR support organization network. Several are FAST organizations, so they receive funding from the office that I'm with to specifically help with SBIR and everything from the initial steps down into commercialization. There's other SBDCs that, due to their area or their specific structure of their office, might focus on more traditional Main Street companies. So they might be helping more on everything, from a restaurant to a brick and mortar store. So it does depend where you're located, but overall, I can say that SBDCs are such a wide-ranging network, and the folks that they hire are very dedicated to helping people navigate what's going on in their area. On the next slide is another one that many people know. It's been around for quite a long time. SCORE used to be an acronym, not anymore as they tried to rebrand. It used to be folks who were actual business executives involved in a company, but then retired and were donating, volunteering their time. But now there's a lot of people who are actually currently working. In fact, when I was getting started in the SBA district office out in the Midwest, I was based in North Dakota. I worked closely with our SCORE chapters, and there were people from their 30s into their 80s that were volunteering and did a fantastic job being mentors. And especially those individuals who would come to the door, the very initial part, they might not even have wanted to set up their SBDC appointment because they just wanted to have a good sounding board on, is this business idea something that I really want to do? And they might have felt that their friends or family were not objective enough. And so the SCORE folks really did a great job at being able to navigate that. Also, we have some folks, and this is across the country. If you go to SCOR's website, you can look for mentors with specific expertise. So a good friend of mine actually started a distillery out of the country, and before he left, he was based here in Washington, D.C., and looked at SCOR's national database, found one of the mentors that had experience actually working for a large beverage distributor, and was able to kind of get his business kicked off being in the U.S. even before he left. So I know that there are a few SCOR volunteers who are very familiar with the tech transfer SBIR world, and so I think there's definitely possibilities there for keyword searches, or for those of you who might actually have experience and want to be involved. It's a wonderful network to check out. But again, many people do understand that SCOR is often for some of those traditional or small companies. But again, I do want to stress that caveat that there are SCOR volunteers that could be helpful to some of the work that you're doing or could possibly do. On the next slide, there's women's business centers, which are having the focus on women, but aren't exclusive to women. And these centers are actually doing some really interesting things in our space lately. So our team has been working with the Association of Women's Business Centers, which is kind of an umbrella for those. But you can also, again, find all of these, the SBDCs, SCOR, Women's Business Centers on SBA.gov, or you can go directly into these pages. But WBCs do tend to offer quite a few training options in addition to counseling and advice. On the next slide, the Veterans Business Outreach Centers, similar to the Women's Business Centers, obviously have their focus, are looking as well at counseling, but tend to be more experts in what it's like to transition. And so one of the programs I think most people know best about what the VBOCs do is the Boots to Business program, which is for not just returning service members, but also their spouses and family. And so all of these partners, it might be a challenge to know, well, who do I go with if they're all in the area? But I think for the most part, how SBA structures the relationship is trying to avoid duplication. And so there is quite a bit of need to support companies, and having the differentiation between can be helpful. And on the ground, you tend to see that they'll work in concert with each other. So I know many WBCs, in fact, will help a company to a certain place, refer on, or vice versa. But if it is something that, let's say you want to be providing guidance to a company or someone who's going to be getting started, on the next slide, I want to highlight SBA's district offices. Again, I came from a district office. So on the previous slide with the map, there are 68 district offices. So there's 10 regions. And those district offices provide such a key role in helping SBA to be present on the ground. I will say many of the offices are small. There's kind of key roles kind of related to the program. So there's a lender relations specialist working with all the banks that are SBA lenders. There's an economic development specialist, which might be ones that you would run across more often as they're out there getting the word out. They're connecting different organizations, making sure it's clear, what SBA is offering and how to access any information that might come directly from the agency, or just help navigating what are coming from all those resource partners. There are also business opportunity specialists, which more on the federal contracting side and are involved with some of the programs that are set aside for certain contracting areas. And then there's also folks who are involved in the direction of the office and in admin and press. So if you are looking to be more involved even in your area, whether it's on a state level or a regional level, you can definitely reach out to those offices and hopefully start building that relationship. Like I said, it can often be a very efficient way to keep in the loop. All right, let's move on into building capacity for small businesses. So I want to focus a little bit on growing, expanding, whereas the first section is more on getting started and how you can access some of that, some of those resource partners. We're going to move on to the next slide, and I'll talk just a few minutes on federal contracting. Many people know, but not everyone, that the federal government is the world's largest customer, often known as the world's largest buyer, I believe. In fact, I believe purchases by the military and civilian installations reaches nearly $500 billion a year, which is quite a bit. But there's a strong push to have small businesses involved in all of what's going on with those purchases. So it is required by law. So it's not just a desire, but required by law to provide some opportunities to small businesses. And SBA has a few ways to get involved. Now, even, I don't want to go too far down into the weeds, but talking about what is a small business, there are size standards that SBA puts out, and that can change at times. And so it is helpful to look at it, because it can also vary by industry. And for the most part, though, a small business is for profit. We're talking about U.S. small businesses, at least located in a place of business in the U.S., operating primarily here, independently owned and operated. And there's obviously going to be some more things through that, but it's depending on the number of employees and the annual average receipts. So there's a lot of people who think a small business is very small, but small businesses can often go up to 500 people or more. And small businesses are sole proprietorships, partnerships, corporations, and other relevant legal forms. So we do cover quite a few of those in the trainings that SBA's resource partners offer. Moving on, but going back to specific contracting, when we're talking about evaluating readiness, there's a lot of companies that want to jump in because of all of that opportunity. And they might be in everything from the construction business, it could be general IT services, and it can be really profitable, but also confusing and a challenge. And so what SBA tries to do is help evaluate readiness. Is now a good time to look at the federal government as a partner, or is it actually going to not be helpful for where my company might be? If you go on to the next slide, there are the certification programs. Again, I'm not going to go deep into all of these, but I'm sure many of you have heard at least some of these acronyms or names that come straight out of legislation, very creative here. So the 8A Business Development Program, the Hub Zone, Women-Owned Small Business, Service Disabled Veteran Owned Program. So all of these combine to be, along with in general small businesses, percentage goals for the federal government. And so there's a team of folks at SBA that take in information across the agencies, and they're tracking, wanting to make sure that 5% of all federal contracting dollars are going to those who are certified as 8A, which are socially and economically disadvantaged small businesses. The Hub Zone is location-based, so there's certain designated Hub Zone tracks. There's 3% are supposed to go to Hub Zone. Women-owned small business, for ones who are certified as women-owned small business, 5% is that goal. And then the service disabled veterans is 3% as well. So total, the kind of goal is for that 23%. And so that's why there's a lot of work by the district offices and some of those other resource partners I mentioned. We're really trying to help companies on, finding out where there are opportunities, getting them registered, all of the details that go into being ready to work with the government. And then on the SBA, on the agency side, SBA works across those agencies to ensure that companies do have that fair access. On the next slide, there's one program, just wanted to highlight briefly, the Mentor Protégé program. So there are some really interesting ways where there could be a formal relationship between a mentor firm, a protege. They often provide assistance in management, technical assistance, even kind of financial systems, contracting in general, trade, other business development. And so I don't have all the links I see now, but if you do look on SBA.gov, there is quite a bit of information on the program and how you might be involved if that would be of interest to anyone you know. And then on the next slide, you know, I almost rely on them too much on the PTACs, but the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, they're actually not funded by SBA. They're funded by the Defense Logistics Agency under DoD. But the PTACs work closely with SBA and our resource partners, and they're basically set up to help small businesses navigate contracts, often federal, but other contracts as well. And I work with PTACs often in my job supporting organizations that are working with those potential SBIR and STTR applicants, because they are great at helping with getting registered for SAM, the System for Award Management, which, I mean, you may know, everyone needs to be registered in order to receive funds from the federal government, but also how to set up the right systems and be prepared to take in federal dollars. So, you know, are you ready for the audit? Are you ready for some of the requirements? And many of them make a key difference across those, could be those construction or, you know, general IT contracts. But many of them are also very aware and in getting more experience in more the innovation and tech transfer realm. So there's been a push, and over the last few years, they had a change in their kind of terms and conditions, and DLA has now said, you know, all the PTACs, I believe there's 300 locations around the country, have to provide some of that basic assistance. And so there's many PTACs, like I said, that I work with that are very skilled in understanding, you know, kind of the world that most of us here on the call might find ourselves in. So you can see all their locations on the PTAC site as well as on SBA.gov. All right, we're going to keep going into the capital section now, specifically on working with, you know, all of the ways SBA could have funding. So next up, I won't, again, focus on the R&D awards on the SBIR side, but we will look at what are some SBA-backed loans, even on the private investor and surety bonds, which most folks don't know is available from SBA as well. So no matter what industry people are in, this does cover quite a broad swath of what's going on in the country. On the next slide, so the SBA's loan programs are designed kind of with those unique needs of small businesses in mind. So we're looking at typically longer repayment terms, lower payments, no prepayment penalties, trying to give flexibility to small businesses while they would also meet their financial obligations. And, you know, in general, the reason that SBA has a loan guarantee program is to make it possible for many small businesses to access the capital that they need. I won't go into kind of these deep thoughts on the banking industry, but there is, without the SBA, so there would be a very large gap where especially newer companies, certain industries wouldn't necessarily fit under a bank's criteria, but it wouldn't necessarily mean that wouldn't be, you know, a bad risk, right? It's still a good risk with the way the bank is set up. It would not be able to do that. And so SBA kind of plays a role in saying to the bank, we will guarantee, if it fits the criteria, we will guarantee a certain percentage of that loan so that the bank has comfort in the fact that the company, the client would be a fit, not quite just solely on their fit, but through that guaranteed loan program allows the bank then to take the risk on the company. Next up is what those loans are often for. So we're looking at everything from just that launch and grow to purchasing actually a small business, getting revolving credit, working capital for the day-to-day, purchasing, renovating, expanding facilities. buying inventory, equipment, machinery, other fixed assets, land, real estate, and then exporting. So basically from $500 up to $5.5 million, the SBA-backed loans are used for many things. Some of the big programs I'll just highlight here, again with the great names, is the 7A, which is it's basically the flagship loan program. It's more of an all-purpose loan used to purchase real estate or equipment, inventory, working capital. Again, those guarantees, just in case you're curious, are around 75 to 85%. And it's processed through the bank or a credit union or some other kind of specialized lender. And then there are a couple kind of programs underneath that. One is the Community Advantage pilot program. And so those are some smaller dollar ones, more in underserved markets. But 7A is pretty common if you know someone who has received an SBA loan. Not saying it was 7A, but that is the bulk of what takes place in that capital realm. The 504 loan program are very competitive, fixed rate, competitive pricing, kind of a good deal, I should say, fixed rate mortgage financing through third-party lenders, so through SBA certified development companies. So generally, borrowers only need a small amount of the percentage of the total loan, and then they'll kind of combine both the third-party lender, the certified development company, the CDC, and be able to do some really interesting things. So that's purchasing the real estate, that's the larger fixed assets. Loans are about up to $5 million. And what is I think a particular interest to me lately is hearing some of the companies in our realm that are working on, SBIR related technologies that have grown, and perhaps they didn't quite fit in the 7A world. They might not have been able to meet some of the cash flow or the requirements for the 7A, but on the 504, they were able to fit, be able to retrofit or purchase lab space or specialized manufacturing facilities, as long as it kind of fell under the amount needed under that $5 million. But some manufacturing projects actually can go up to $5.5 million. And so hopefully I was hoping to have a couple success stories for you here today. But maybe for one of our future announcements, we'll be able to talk about how 504 and possibly 7A have helped us in the innovation-focused small businesses. There are also microloans of $500 up to $50,000, so that's kind of on the real small side, and those are through SBA certified microlending programs. On the next slide, I just more shout outs to the SBA Research Partner Network, because when you're trying to secure a loan or somebody who's trying to secure a loan, there's a lot of details, a lot of things that you're going to be looking at. So, even trying to figure out what's the right size, purpose of the loan, size and age of the business, and so forth. On the next one, it's also overwhelming to look at. In certain areas, there are many SBA lenders. So SBA lender is a lender that's been approved, certified by the SBA to provide those guaranteed loans. And so there's the lender match tool, trying to make it easier actually on both sides for companies, small businesses to find a lender, and then also for the lenders to look for small businesses that they would want to fund. So it's a more user-friendly website trying to make those connections. On the next slide, I won't spend too much time, but it is really interesting, when you dive deep into who is receiving some of the capital, and SBA does work through the 5 Cs model. So the district offices, resource partners often give information on this. But, especially on the capitalization side, looking at some of the business assets and earnings, but just like what's the skin in the game. So beyond your credit score, beyond what your cash flow is, whatever collateral you have, what is the company willing to put forward as they're trying to build up, whatever they might have in mind. Next is the Small Business Investment Company, or SBIC. So these are privately owned and managed investment funds that are licensed and regulated by the SBA. So an SBIC, it uses its own capital, but plus funds borrowed with an SBA guarantee to make equity and debt investments into qualifying small businesses. The next slide. Basically, there are, SBA's interactions are often direct. They're with the SBICs. So the SBICs are applying to be an SBIC through SBA. They're licensed and have to fall under a whole slew of regulations. And so most of SBA is on that side, but there are, a lot of SBICs that are looking for companies in markets around the country. And so you can learn more and even find an SBIC through the link on the slide here. Some have looked at, again, in the SBIR side, and there have been some interesting programs in the past that have helped companies in kind of certain markets be able to access this. But then also how SBA has kind of increased the reach, trying to increase the number of SBICs that are able to do some of that investing, especially in markets where there might not be as much other private capital. Next is on surety bonds. Very interesting, I think, very interesting, as they help small businesses win contracts by providing, basically by providing the customer the contract with the guarantee that the work will be completed. So many public and private contracts require surety bonds, which are offered by surety companies. And then the SBA guarantees surety bonds for certain surety companies. So it kind of allows more companies to be able to access those surety bonds that might not meet some of the other criteria, so that they can qualify and win that work and grow their company. All right, we'll go on to the next slide. Yep, right there's great. About international trade or exporting. Not actually last month, our team did a webinar with the Association of University Research Parks, AURP, and SBA's Office of International Trade. Was fantastic. We had a couple SBIR awardees featured because of the work that they had done. So they had been developing their technologies. They received multiple SBIR awards. They had received additional investment. There's a lot of promise in what they were doing outside of the U.S. And so as you can see here, obviously, in our world, nearly 96% of consumers live outside the U.S. So it's a very large market, 2/3 of the world's purchasing power. And SBA wants companies to be able to tap into that. So there are, again, some kind of sub-capital guarantee, the guaranteed loan programs, but there's also some other assistance. On the loan side, there's export express loans, working capital program, and international trade loans. I'm going to go to the next slide. Here, I want to really highlight the STEP program. I don't have a separate slide for it, but the State Trade and Expansion Program, basically STEP funds, can be tapped to support travel for trade shows, missions, and other traditional methods of global marketing and sales. But they also are able to help pay for international intellectual property protection, which many of you might relate to. Product testing, licensing, certification requirements for foreign markets, and product adaptation to meet local standards. Last year, STEP actually also increased its focus and allowable expenses for everything from website translation, search engine optimization, digital marketing, e-commerce expansion, virtual trade shows, which is great. SBA's the SBA's Office of International Trade administers the STEP awards, but they are managed by state trade offices. So most states have a STEP program, and you can reach out directly to them for information on applying and being able to use any of those funds. Again, the companies that we had worked with on the webinar had just a great example, so I might try to throw that here in the chat, the link to that recording, as they were able to really work closely with their step groups, which understood kind of on the SBIR side of things, and we're just open more to finding out how to fit things and meet their needs. There's also other export assistance centers. SBDCs have typically an international trade kind of expert on each of their teams. And so definitely a lot of areas to be able to get support. On the next slide, I think I did include a link to the export assistance centers, the UZIACs, as they're sometimes known, just to explore that process and get help. And there's SBA staff kind of around the country that can make some of those connections for you. And your district office too might be helpful there. On the next slide, we're going to move into the recovery phase. So this is more of SBA's Office of Disaster Assistance. On the next slide, some of the programs I wanted to highlight here that kind of all on one slide aren't just under the disaster assistance, but are definitely related to this topic of how do we help small businesses when really tough or bad things happen. In response to COVID, there are the loan programs that were obviously very big in the news. There's also been certain payment programs, payment assistance programs, and grants. So I'll just try to go through real quick. The Payment Protection Program, known as PPP, was a loan provided through participating PPP lenders. So those were all with the banks that had agreed to be part of the PPP program. Under the debt relief on some of the 7A 504 microloans, those were to certain kind of previous borrowers of those traditional products. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or EIDL, that was directly from the SBA. So that was from SBA's Office of Disaster Assistance, providing working capital economic relief to small businesses. And that actually even included agricultural businesses too, and nonprofits. That all of those that they were currently experiencing a temporary loss of revenue due to COVID. And there's a targeted EIDL advance, and that was specifically for the businesses in the low-income communities, and those were additional funds to ensure that they would have some continuity or hopefully adaption. The supplemental targeted advance, that was in the American Rescue Plan Act. That was an additional $5,000 payments to hard-hit entities. The Shuttered Venue Operators Grants, those are the grants. These are going for live venue operators or promoters, theatrical producers, live performing arts organizations, museums, motion picture theater, talent representatives. That was a $16.2 billion program. I don't have the exact kind of current status in terms of dollar amount there. The Restaurant Revitalization Fund, that was a $28 billion fund to help eligible entities in what was a very hard-hit industry. That funding was exhausted in late May. On the next slide, basically, SBA also is able to do some of these disaster loans for some interesting, unique purposes, even for homeowners, renters, business owners, just trying to get access to loans where that they wouldn't exist elsewhere, and during very important times, especially there's some businesses for flooding or hurricane where the money is needed right away to be able to at least save or rescue parts of physical assets or even the operations and ensure that continuity. On the next slide, highlighting, I didn't see information on the 2021 National Disaster Preparedness Month, but that is in September. And each year I always see a whole slew of really interesting webinars and information about being prepared, and even very simple ways that small businesses or even people in general can just be ready regardless of what happens, natural disaster, weather, or things like that we've been experiencing lately. So it's especially I think troubling at SBA when they look at the data of companies that don't reopen after a disaster, and trying to get people to be able to keep their operations going, or be able to at least pivot and to continue to provide for themselves, and also just for the strength of the economy overall. All right, the next slide, I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. I just couldn't not talk a little bit about SBIR. And so on the next slide, I'm jumping to the conclusion. I've been using the acronyms during this presentation, but that most of you are familiar with SBIR and STTR, so Small Business Innovation Research, Technology Transfer. SBA does not have its own program, so it can be confusing to people outside when they hear about SBA's SBIR, STTR program. But really what that's meant to say is SBA is that coordinating hub. So our team is in charge of ensuring that the policy directive goes out to guide the agencies that are all required to have an SBIR or STTR program, depending on how much they're spending in extramural R&D. And on the next slide, we try to have quite a bit of information on SBIR.gov, not only for potential applicants, but also for the agencies and for our partners as well, SBIR support organizations. On the next slide, I've referenced SBA has a local assistance section on SBA.gov. But on SBIR.gov, we have also put together a local assistance section, understanding that many of you, especially in this realm, will have some unique needs compared to, let's say, a restaurant or another kind of small company in a traditional space. And so you can go on and see some local assistance. We've highlighted some of our funded partners that I've even mentioned now, FAST. We've also included many of the SBDCs, PTACs, Manufacturing Extension Partnership MEP centers, and some of our federal agency partner, some of their funded programs as well. Next slide, I wanted to put in a quick shout out for Support Organizations Monthly call that I host. So for those of you who are interested, you're coming from that support side. So you're working with teams or researchers or kind of potential SBIR applicants or other folks working on kind of high risk research and commercialization. I would love to invite you to join in each month. So it's not for companies, but it's for kind of that larger ecosystem of individuals to talk about how to accessing information, trying to find out what are the updates across the programs, where are the opportunities to increase training, and then hopefully increase some better outcomes for those kind of that subset of small businesses across the country. On the next slide, if you want to keep in touch, our team does try to loop in things that are going on across SBA that would be of a special interest to the community. I do recommend you join the newsletter. One big thing I should have had a slide in today is for the National SBIR Week. It's the birthday of the SBIR program coming up towards the end of July. So we will be having a full week of events focused on all kinds of topics, from those who are very new to this realm of, do I want to even, jump into this kind of entrepreneurship, to people who are familiar with SBIR and want to, take more advantage of other opportunities. And then our local partners, a lot of the folks that I've talked about, we've been requesting and are seeing that many of them are putting together kind of supplemental events, in-person, virtual, across the country, just trying to celebrate this whole SBIR world and bring all of these pieces together in a more efficient manner. So if you want to put that on your calendar, or at least you can find it all on SBIR.gov in the events, but it is July 19th through the 23rd. And then if you just go to SBIR in general, we have also, I just want to highlight, we have tutorials and other information on kind of that crux of technology and entrepreneurship. So the next slide, working together, I think, we've talked about the FLC and SBA. We're going to try to continue to create a really good climate of innovation and entrepreneurship. And so even as things this last year have been a challenge, overall, entrepreneurs across the country didn't stop finding new ways to do things better. They're continuing to confront challenges and solving problems in healthcare, cybersecurity, national security, climate science, aviation, and so much more. And so kind of my parting words before we turn it over to questions are, regardless of what corner of SBA you might know or find yourself in, as a whole, we are committed to doing everything that we can to try to nurture the nation's entrepreneurial spirit and help it grow. So hopefully you all were able to take a peek into new parts of SBA today. And Corinne, would love to see what folks are curious about or where they might have questions.
Yeah, so feel free to jump in and ask any additional questions you might have. We've got a couple that we can talk about. I also just really wanted to thank Brittany for coming in today. It's wonderful to kick off the series with such a great partner with the SBA. So thank you so much for talking about those programs. And I really hope that some of our constituents who have joined us today are able to utilize them and disperse that information out to their network. Thank you very much. And do folks be on the lookout for our series as it evolves. We don't know when the next one's going to be, but it will be in 2021. So make sure to sign up for all of our newsletters and you will be in the loop. All right, Brittany, so our first couple of questions are actually about mentoring. So we have a person who asked, could you please discuss the Mentor Protégé program? And another one who asked, how does someone become a SCORE mentor?
Oh, interesting. Okay, I'll start with the SCORE mentor. That is very easy. So if you do go to score.org, I think they have a very user-friendly process to sign up, and you'll be able to connect with a local SCORE chapter who will kind of get you down that path. There's some basic training on what are the tenets of being a SCORE mentor, but I think it would be fantastic, especially if we can get more individuals that are experienced in tech transfer to be SCORE mentors. Again, now with all of the virtual connections, I think it is easier for people to find them. So you're not just, relying on waiting who would be someone that you could mentor near you, but you could mentor someone around the country. For the Mentor Protégé program, again, that would probably be one of my weak points to be able to describe in depth. But I think if you are curious, we can share, my email address and I can try to connect you. Also, we can send folks to SBA.gov. I will say a lot of what I hear through the Mentor Protégé program is actually for joint ventures. And so there's certain benefits to both parties in going together to be able to compete for certain federal contracts.
Yeah, partnerships and collaborative arrangements are becoming more and more normal across the federal government, and I love seeing it. It involves people at so many different levels. Okay, so how well are the local centers connected to local labs in your experience, and how could the FLC improve connections?
That's a great question. So I know of certain places around the country where the relationship is very tight and very smooth. So some of our partners are often doing events with labs in their area. They're in communication in a way that makes it very easy for the lab to be able to refer people that might need some of their help, and as well as those partners to be able to refer folks to the lab for some of the services that FLC or that specific lab may offer. That's not the case everywhere, and this has come up, I would say, in particular for those of you who might have heard about the SBIR Road Tour in the past. So I was on the bus from 2017 to 2019 and was glad to count with FLC representatives on the majority of those 50 staff that we had there. And some places weren't sure how to approach their labs. So I think there's definitely some work that I would like to do or see us do here together to be able to make it easier. I know it can be a challenge with everyone's schedule and just the amount of information about different programs coming out. So I think that on the lab side, there's no need to wait if you are interested to be able to take advantage of some of these resources, and that's what they're there for, to be taken advantage of. So whether it's reaching out to the district office, reaching out to one of our FAST organizations that would really be able to facilitate that connection, or directly to the center, I'm happy to provide some guidance on that if folks are particularly interested.
Yeah, and through the FLC too, you also have us as a resource. So you can contact us, the staff members, and we can put you in touch with those organizations. We can plug you in with the network. Brittany spoke about the SBI or the SBA network that we're all in as a support organization, and FLC is one of those support organizations. So we can plug you in there and help out that way too. So make sure to utilize your resources on all levels, including your membership with the FLC. All right. So how are the 8A women-owned, veteran-owned business efforts connected to SBIR Phase 3? That's a specific one.
That is very specific. So for folks who are familiar with Phase 3, any company that has received a Phase 1 or Phase 2 SBIR award is eligible for a Phase 3, which actually is often talked about in a larger umbrella of being a federal contract or additional investment dollars. I'm going to jump to the conclusion. In this case, we're talking about just the contract side. And so any federal agency, non-SBIR related, can move forward to enter into a Phase 3, as long as, let's say they want to buy something from the company that was either, that has to extend from, complete, or derive from the work that they did in SBIR work. So let's say, I had a very strange request a while back. It was some federal office related to libraries. They had stumbled upon a technology in NSF SBIR awardee had built. It was a database. It was some kind of back end process that was actually funded by those SBIR dollars. And so this library group wanted to be able to do this direct award. And so that has no bearing if that company is separately an 8A or women-owned company. That's not going to influence the Phase 3 process, and there might be some more experts on the line here, but where it might come up is the agency is still, though, recording if that was a women-owned small business, if it was an 8A, and it might count towards those goals as they report those to SBA. But the Phase 3 is a straight Phase 3. In fact, even if a technology is sold to a large company, the large company can get a Phase 3 on that technology. So it does not even have to belong to the same small business that did the work.
Wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. So what sort of support is available for startups preparing proposals for SBIR funding?
That's a great one too. And I was thinking of all these extra slides I should have. I just wanted to be very quick today. But one group I keep mentioning is FAST, and the folks, we have 24, we're soon to have 32 around the country. And those are groups that work directly with me, with our office, in SBIR assistance. So while they might not help writing the full SBIR proposal, they're usually well connected in the area and can give guidance on how to proceed there. Many of them either offer what we call Phase 0, which are either small grants or dollars, access to really high quality proposal writing assistance, or they'll connect with their state or their area, which those folks can often offer their own Phase 0 programs too. So FAST is a great way to get started on that, but again, that's not going to cover every single state. And so we do try to have on SBIR.gov, and we try to have kind of in our network people in each, around the country that you could go to and access information. It might be your SBDC, it might be you know, a local accelerator or university office. It really is a very rich kind of area. And so that's part of our goal at SBA, is to make that easier to understand, and then work with partners like FLC so that you can also help us in that endeavor as people are trying to get access to that. But if you're looking for proposal assistance, my recommendation is definitely start with FAST.
Yeah, wonderful. And I think too, one of the underutilized resources in that space, like you mentioned, accelerators. There are often local entrepreneurship groups and local technology development groups that are state-sponsored or city-sponsored that people can utilize to access those resources in their local area that may not be plugged in at the larger national network. So make sure that you check into those as well. Okay, how about STEP loans? Is STEP a loan or a grant?
So STEP funds are grants, and they are, as far as I know, they don't have a loan component.
Okay.
So don't quote me on it. But no, all of the examples I know that I can think of, they were all grants. So a company would apply. In each of these STEP groups has a different amount of money. It's kind of a formula based. So let's say the state of California has a certain amount of STEP funds compared to South Dakota, and they might have their own, you know, specific plan. So working directly with that STEP group is going to be the best way to go and see, especially if what you want to do would be approved and if they have funding for it. So contacting them sooner is always better because there are times, I think, when some of those funds do expire. But no, those are our grants. And so I think, you know, I've been in touch. We have great people on the SBA side in that international trade office who are particularly interested in this world, and some of them are definitely more familiar with SBIR. So I think now is a great time to, you know, see if STEP would be a good way to venture out. Obviously, it's going to help too, and not having to suffer all those costs on your own.
Yeah, definitely very important, especially in this current climate. And so speaking of the current climate, we're coming up on our last question here. So folks, if you have any additional questions, let us know. But our last question at the moment is, how do SBA loans work with FEMA for disasters?
Oh, that's another challenging question for me. And back when I used to give a lot of presentations at SBA, I think that was a little bit easier, but we could probably get back to you on that. But the disaster loans are different. They coordinate with FEMA, but FEMA is typically on the ground right away, and there are kind of a differentiation. So FEMA will take certain pieces or certain parts. SBA disaster loans, while very quick, aren't going to be, I don't believe, as fast as what FEMA is going to be able to deploy. And so it's kind of the different structure of those programs overall. So it's definitely good to know about in terms of disaster, because like I said, the disaster ones can cover even, you know, homeowners and other things, not just small businesses.
Yeah, very, very good. Thank you for letting us know about all of these wonderful programs. I know that we often get focused on that funding space, and it's really great to know that there are other services available and be able to call back on this information later on as we run up against people in need. So to that end, I would just like to again thank you very much, Brittany, for coming, for being here. We really appreciate the information you've provided. To our folks who are watching at the moment, we are recording this, and this is going to be available on our website for you to view, and I will send out a copy of that recording to you as attendees here in the next couple of days, so be on the lookout for that. We really appreciate everything that you at the SBA do and your relationship with us. We look forward to seeing you at SBIR Week later on in the summer. That's going to be great. And we do have some programming that we're working on together there, specifically on that Wednesday of that week, which I believe, let me look at my calendar, is the 21st. So exciting stuff coming down the line for FLC and SBA partnership together. Any last thoughts, Brittany, before we close out?
No, Corinne, and thank you for highlighting that. I'm glad you'll be following up with information here, and specifically for SBIR Week. But I look forward to seeing, you know, what's possible. I think the success stories really do highlight all of the amazing things that can happen. And so I just appreciate everyone's time here today, and hopefully we can continue to see what's possible.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for attending. We will talk to you again soon. Have a great afternoon.
All right.
Bye.